Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you guys about social media within your space, and I tried my best to tell myself to not get on a tangent, because I do have certain things I'm passionate about when it comes to NDIS and everything, but I do go on this one tangent. And that is from the experience I've had with a lot of NDIS businesses, is that I've had a lot of them say, hey, David, I want to, I'm starting an NDIS business, but I do all the services. I want you to help me market. And the reality about marketing is that it is very, very hard to market when you have generalized services, meaning you do everything, right? And I think it's the same thing with support coordinators. I've had a chat with them as well. And then even I come from also community services as well. So having a chat with, oh my gosh, I just had a blank. Social workers, having conversations with social workers, and they'll say that a lot of NDIS companies just say they do everything. And so we don't know where to send our participants. Because if you say you do everything, everybody does everything. Does that make sense? So in order for you to stand out, this is just a little tangent I'm going on before I share what I want to share. If you do want to stand out, or if you want to make it easier for us as marketers, you have to be niche. Meaning you have to find out what is it about your company that makes you stand out from everybody else. So if we're thinking about, you were talking about collaboration, and I have so many examples with a company that we've worked with for the last 2 years, and they're doing really well. What made them stand out is they found out their niche, and then when it comes to collaboration, you know who to send people to, and then they send people your way because you specialize in that specific niche. So, we've got Lindsay right here who does gaming. We've got occupational therapy, right?
Right, nutrition coach.
Yeah, nutrition. And you've got so many different niches that if you want collaboration, that's how it's going to work. Where, we send people the right way. Even it helps support coordinators to know who to send to. So if you think about it, when a support coordinator has a potential participant for you, they're going to think through, okay, who is the right person to send this person to, right? And so if you're a company that does everything, you're not going to be the first person that the support coordinator is going to think about. But if the person is thinking, oh, this person is interested in gaming, right? Straight away, the support coordinator will be like, oh, I know a business that specializes in this, so I'll just send them straight there. Does that make sense? You yourself may do gaming as well, right? You may do, maybe social inclusion or whatever, right? You may do social inclusion and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't specialize, you don't specialize in a specific niche, so you're just going to be powered up in a lot of emails, in a lot of conversations because you don't specialize. Does that make sense? So that is just my little thing, because it's been very hard to help market businesses that just simply have a list of services and that's it. Does that make sense? Like, there's nothing wrong with having a list of services, but you need to find out, like, what is that one thing that you're like, okay, this is what sets me apart. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, perfect. So here's what I'm going to do so I don't take a lot of your time. I want you to get out your phones. So we're going to do something to help me make this presentation easier for me. So scan the QR code. We are going to go through a scorecard. Now, this scorecard is going to help you figure out where you are at right now when it comes to your social media and whatnot. It will just be a way to help you. Everybody has scanned the QR code. So this will just go through a lot of the stuff that I wanted to share. This makes it easier for me because last minute, this will make it very interactive for both of us, yeah? Mm-hmm. All right, perfect. If you sign in, so don't do the questions yet. So we're going to go through each one together, all right? I think somebody's already finished. All right, let's go through it. Let's go through it together. All right, so question number 1, how would you rate your current social media presence? Let me tell you what the word presence means, because some of us maybe already have social media. For those who don't have social media yet, technically you have no presence, right? you are non-existent, right? For those who do have social media, so I also want to encourage you, Let me tell you why social media is really, really important. The reason why social media is really important also with websites, and there's something called CEO, which is an amazing thing. That is because it fixes the issue of first impressions. So if you really think about it, right? A first impression, when a support coordinator, when a potential participant, when a family goes to your social media, that whatever that social media looks like, that is the first impression that they get of who you are. Does that make sense? Your website is also first impression, right? So a lot of people may never be able to have a face-to-face interaction with you as an owner of your business, but your website, your social media will be the first impression, right? And that will be a deciding factor whether they want to even inquire to use your services. Does that make sense? So when it comes to something like that, I'll use examples like maybe, I know you all remember the first time you fell in love, right?
Yes.
You all remember the first time you fell in love? The first impression mattered, right? The first impression matters. Maybe your partner wanted you to maybe look sharp. Maybe they are into somebody who's well cleaned up or well shaven and whatnot. So before you even have that first conversation, if you don't get first impressions right, you won't even get your first date. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If you don't get your first impressions right, you won't even be approached. Does that make sense? So first impression, social media helps with first impression. Social media is not the answer to getting your first client. To getting your first client, there's a lot of things that is involved. It's a whole dynamic roller coaster, but social media helps when it comes to first impressions. Does that make sense? Because I get a lot of potential clients who come to me and says, "Hey, I expect you to bring me my first client." That is not how it works. Social media will give you a better chance at being approached, a better chance at actually going on your first date and having that first meeting or that first consultation. Does that make sense? Yeah. So without any social media presence, I'm talking about website and all of that, you will not get approached. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, perfect. So do your rating. So is your social media presence non-existent? Is it minimal? Is it active? Or is it very active? Active and very active just basically means, do you update it often, or the last time you made your last post was in 2022. Does that make sense? All right, cool. Yeah, so put in your answer. For me, is somewhat active. I'll add that in. How diverse is your content? I'm going to just quickly touch on this. So diversity when it comes to content, it basically means there's different types of posts. So you're talking about maybe text, right? I'll give you an example, right? One thing I do for one of our clients is that I make sure that any news or information about NDIS, I make sure that I post it on their actual page, right? So any updates from NDIS, the actual NDIS page, whenever stuff come up, I repost it to that company, because that's one type of content, right? And it's good for, it gives it a look that you're interested in the updates. You want to give information to your potential clients or even your own clients. There's another variety, which is text. It could be just simple inspirations or whatever. Another type is photos, right? Photos is a very big thing. Making sure that... yeah, so making sure... yeah, technology. So making sure that you actually show your potential participants or your potential families and whatnot, what it feels like to actually be part of your business, right? So if obviously you have to make sure that there's guidelines when it comes to photos, and make sure people sign the consent forms and whatnot, but making sure you actually do have those smiling faces on your social media. It's a variety of content you could put on to actually show, okay, this is, if your social media or if your website is just a bunch of information without attaching a photo to show people what actually that means or what that feels like, right? So basically people won't even have time to be able to even read through. But if you give them if they see what it's going to be like to be part of your community, it makes it easier for them to even consider. Does that make sense? Some other things is video. Like, so a lot of these things, it comes from no expense at all to you to a lot of expense. Obviously, video, you have to invest. You have to look at, buying a camera or even using your phone, or maybe even if you use your phone, you have to download an app that edits, those videos. You know what I mean? So there may be an expense with video, but it is actually more effective than even a photo, because it's not just, because obviously a picture shows a million things or whatever that saying is, but there's something special about a video, because you actually do get to see that smile happen. Does that make sense? All right. So how diverse is your content? Is it just photos? Is it just text? Is it just a bunch of information on your social media or your website? Or is it diverse? All right. So let's put in your answer. So only text and images, a mix of images and videos. Or if you don't have any content, put that on. All right. I will put, I'm not going to be, I don't even have it well myself, so we'll go through it together. The other one is, how often do you engage with your audience? I'll explain this very easy. When it comes to social media, the way it works is that as much as we don't like being ignored face to face, when somebody comments on your social media and you don't actually reply, that is ignoring them. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if somebody says, hey, you look beautiful, and then all you do is just walk away, that is not, do you get what I mean? So you have to be able to kind of respond, engage. So how often do you engage with your audience? Never, rarely, sometimes, frequently. And I want to say this as well, even outside of social media, like even for a networking event like this, I think sometimes you get a lot of phone numbers, you get to connect, but the question is, are you actually going to reach out? Do you get what I mean? Are you actually going to engage in those new formed relationships? I want to encourage you, do get engaged in those relationships. Or if somebody does reach out and say, hey, it was good to meet you today, start that relationship straight away. Make sure you engage. Does that make sense? All right, awesome. Let's go. It's not that many. It's only about 6 or 7. The other one is accessibility, and that is obviously a very big word in the NDIS world. I get to sort out a lot of accessibility stuff for websites. How accessible is your content for people with disabilities? We're talking from how big is your fonts. We're talking to having more images than text is actually an accessibility thing. Yeah, so here's the thing about websites and social media and whatnot. Like, we'd like to necessarily produce stuff almost for us. It's like, as long as we understand that information, we're good. But you also have to think through the lens of somebody who can't read, somebody who can't see, or all that kind of stuff, right? Whatever, like, again, I'm an amateur on disabilities, so I'm just making up things. But but you understand what I mean. So you have to be able to look at it from the lens of the other person on the other side of the computer when they are reading your website, looking at your social media. That's why images, videos, like that is a very, very big thing. So so is your content accessible? Not at all, somewhat, mostly, or it's fully accessible. All right, does that make sense? Yes. All right, perfect. I think this is, we've got 2 more. All right, community engagement. How well are you building an online community? Now, with the world where we are at in this era, there is such thing as an online community. And I know because we're used to meeting in person or interacting in person, the community on social media, your followers, they are actually part of your community. When somebody decides to be a follower, they're part of a community. So when you have that in mind, the way you post changes, the things you say changes. So you have that in mind. You're like, okay, hey, I've got this. Maybe I've got a social inclusion program like that's weekly, right? So knowing that you've got a community that's out there, okay, every single week I am going to make sure that they are updated on the activities that's happening this week and whatnot. If you don't think that they are an actual community, you actually never think about even updating your social media and why not and whatnot. Do you get what I mean? So when you start a business, or when you start, let's say you start a group, right? Maybe a WhatsApp group or whatever. I know we're all used to WhatsApp. That's an easier one to explain, right? If you start a WhatsApp group for whatever topic or whatever thing, if you never really, as the founder of that WhatsApp group, if you never update or you never say anything, that group just starts dying and people just start leaving. So you have to understand that your followers are a community. And so you have to be able to figure out ways to build that community. To build your followers is not just a few clicks. It's actually about building an actual community. And that community consists of your family and friends. That community consists of, business partners, for example. Not business partners, business colleagues and friends. Like, for example, people in this room, maybe some of us may follow your social media. You also have to also update us on what's going on. Did you get what I mean? You have to update us. How is your company going? So it's a community. I just wanted you to understand that. Does that make sense? All right, I want to talk more about that. So how well are you good at building that online community? Maybe another way I can say, are you conscious of that online community that you're building? All right, I will do that. Feedback. So how effective do you use feedback from social media to improve your services? This is basically making sure that you figure out a way to get feedback as to how your services are run. So there's the biggest thing is finding out how people feel about your services, or even how the family, testimonials is a very, very big thing when it comes to that first impression thing, right? People read the testimonials and they're like, oh my goodness, this program is amazing, or this service is amazing. So how well do you use feedback when it comes to that space? All right, let's go to the next one. This is the last one. All right, and this is a very big one. Do you have clear social media goals? Now, a lot of us, maybe if you haven't opened a social media, a lot of us will open a social media, but the truth of the matter is, you're just opening a social media for the sake of opening a social media. You have to be able to figure out that, you have to be able to realize that social media is a tool, right? So when I say that social media is not what's going to get you clients, it will get you clients. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do, like networking and all of, everything else that you need to do, contacting, all those services and whatnot. But what is the purpose of the tool called social media? You have to actually recognize what is social media going to do for you? What is the goal of using social media, right? And once you realize that, you'll be more deliberate about the way you're going to use it. Does that make sense? So if you have no goal for it, it will just sit there for many months. You'll never post, because it's not just about posting. You are posting with intentionality, knowing this is why I'm doing this. Does that make sense? So do you have clear social media goals? All right? So do you have no goals? Do you have kind of vague and a rough idea? Do you have defined goals? Or do you have clear and measurable goals? For example, I'll give you a tip of something that we did. I created a newsletter for one of my clients, and I came up with a list, all the different services like Anglicare and all that kind of stuff. So I created that list, and I would send an email every single month to that email list, and I said, hey, these are the programs that we've run this month. This month, ABCD, these are photos and whatnot. And from there, we've managed to actually get a lot of those guys reach out and say, oh, I've got somebody who needs this and this and this, or you're the right person to do it. So for me, when it comes to email marketing, there was a specific goal in mind. It wasn't just, let me just send a bunch of emails. It was very deliberate. It was very measured. So when it comes to using your social media, websites, even if you think about photos, videos, you have to be able to be very clear about your goals, to also measure your goals, and actually measuring how effective what you're doing is. Does that make sense? So in order for you to be effective in the area of using social media or even marketing in general, you have to be able to measure what you're doing, what's working and what's not working, depending on the niche that you are in and what you are trying to accomplish. So that comes to the end of our scorecard. So it will give you a score to see how good you are in those areas. Now, if some of those areas are under 50%, those are areas that you need to go and think about and see if you can improve in those areas. So yeah, for me, I need to be better at my content variety and making sure that I do more than just texts, and I need to work on maybe a bit of videos. I'm actually very conscious right now of what I need to do for my business. All right, cool. That's pretty much it for my presentation. I hope I wanted to do this because I wanted to make sure that it's interactive, that you actually got something out of this.